dia, Portugal!
In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GuMPer Morning Show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GuMPer.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day.
Hey, GuMPers.
Hola, bon dia, alegria. Munson here with the Good Morning Portugal show, live stream and the podcast. How are you this morning? Me? Yes, well, it is the morning after the night before. A good evening was had by all, for those of you who came along, watched, or even took part. It was a full house on the screen last night for the Good Morning Portugal Wine Club. Great job. It's like a nightclub in here. The floor is still sticky. There are quite a number of empty bottles of wine. And I can give you some highlights actually, but strangely enough, there's also lost property here. There's a pair of spectacles which bring a certain je ne sais quoi. It's like some sort of parlor game, isn't it? A brolly, an umbrella, also here this morning in the studio. Wow, these glasses are truly bending my perception. And a few corks, a little bit of clearing up to do this morning. I don't think I can. Let's just put those up there for a moment. So if anyone has left a pair of spectacles in the Good Morning Portugal studio, could you please claim them from reception after the show? I think the person who does own these glasses started, well, they brought 6 bottles of wine over, I think 5 of which, and one plus one of mine that I got, a very disappointing 2019 Vinho Verde. It was all about 2019, and we concluded that it was a pretty good year. It was an interesting year for wine production in Portugal, notably, of course, because it was before the pandemonium kicked in, and it was a wet beginning. Who doesn't like a wet start first thing in the wine producing year? And it produced some very interesting wines, it seems many of which we tried last night. Not this one, however. Was this a 2019? This is an interesting brand. It's a 2019. Marques de Marialva, and you can be forgiven for being in a wine store, being faced with many wines, and then thinking to yourself, "Oh, that looks helpful. A wine star, or one of those gold discs there from some sort of expo or competition in another part of the world." That was quite disappointing. However, Garvo, when it comes to Marques de Marialva, a full-bodied Bairrada. That's his favorite. That's the one that we enjoyed last night. And we also tried the Jaen grape, which I'm not familiar with, Jaen, which was nice to try. Thank you, Johnny Cocktail, for joining us as well on the show. First timer, and Michael and Catherine distinguished themselves. They chose a wine from 2015 and were investigating what wines are like in Portugal that are made in amphora. Which are these great big clay pots, Roman style, huge vessels. I think the wine that they drank wasn't brewed in vessels quite this big, but they're lined with pine resin and wax, I believe, which obviously is going to give the wine some flavor as well. So thank you to you both, the Whitbees, to Johnny Cocktail. Great to see you. And of course, Linda, Doc and Leona were there as well. I can ask him if he was with me this morning. I could ask him about this flu surge that's going on. I'm going to touch in on that news from Jorge Branco. Do you remember him? He's been reporting throughout the pandemic times, and continues to do so. And he still sends out quite a nice little news digest, and I'll read a little bit from that. I must send him a tush de mishta as well. That's all he asked for on his Substack. He's a Substack writer, Portuguese news in English for estrangeiros. He's continuing with that. Some news headlines from him. Flu surge puts pressure on hospitals. Why olive oil is suddenly so expensive. And president appeals to voters. New right-wing alliance forms. So we'll check those out. Plus a really nice little bit of news that I came across yesterday. And the gentleman behind the news yesterday that I discovered is going to be joining us tonight on the Portugal Club. He's going to be our special guest with our intimate audience of Portugal Clubbers at 8:30 this evening. And he would be Paulo of this new initiative, a way of helping foreigners of all kinds better integrate into their new lives. I think I'll have a look at that this morning, but not until I said hello. I think there's a tea duck vacuum. And yes, Bobby, it was a good night. It's always a good night, isn't it, when people leave things behind, like the spectacles. It was a spectacle, and these are the spectacles. Official merch from the night before. Yeah, how are you? Top of the morning to you, Bobby O'Reilly. And I don't know if you heard the part of the show yesterday where I think I've organised a flight up and down the Silver Coast in a 4-seater aircraft. The pilot could be useful, right? Because I don't think you, me, or Andy have a pilot's license currently. Although you never know, do you, with people? You never know. Bobby may or Andy may well have a pilot's license that they didn't care to mention. But we do have a tea duck vacuum still on tour, out and about, and James is on some sort of official business as well this morning. So we have Coach Turner with the God Squad tip of the day. Thanks, Bobby, for popping in. Maybe you'll be joining us tomorrow morning. That'll be wonderful if you can. And Pete, who was with us last night, as well as Linda. Oh, yeah, I was thanking everybody who joined us. Doc and Leona, it was nice to see you too. Linda in Alvagra, and Pete and Diane as well. Hope you're feeling better, Diane. Bem-aja por uma ótima noite ontem, Carl. Yes, thank you for last night. It's always nice to hear that, isn't it? Thank you for last night. Want to hear a joke about pizza? Never mind, it's too cheesy. Morning all from Owen. Good to see you, Owen. And with James, with Slug's friend James and T-Duck missing, it might be a moment where others who are normally quiet here in the mornings might want to step forward and say hi and introduce yourself. So feel free to do so. Mamabear will be joining us at 9 this morning. And maybe I was coaxing her onto the show late last night, and she was the bottom line is I don't know if Lisa from the Montefrio Alpaca Center up there near Aveiro will be joining us or not. I hope she will be. I hope she got the memo, because she's great fun to talk to, and it's an amazing project. Whether or not she joined us, I'll have a look and show you Montefrio, the alpaca experience up there, which is one of the first things that I got to know Lisa. I don't remember how. It's often like that with people. You know, you start talking to people, next thing you know, you're visiting their place or going to see a special place, particularly with Lisa, the Alpaca Center. You don't forget when you go to an Alpaca Center, they're extraordinary creatures. And she collects the wool, she makes things out of the wool. And it was always great fun to pop up there when we lived up in that part of the country to go and see her. So I hope we can connect with her this morning. If we can't, I'll tell you about it from her Facebook page. And I urge you to pop and visit her as well, because you can have a very interesting experiences meeting alpacas and hanging out with them in her orchard, which is a lovely thing to do. So Mamabear at 9, and hopefully, fingers crossed, Lisa at 9:30. Bom dia a todos e bem-vindo a terça-feira. Finally back training today after 5 weeks off. Nice one, coach. My heel seems okay. So as I advise everyone, I'll be starting slowly. And God Squad tip of the day. Thank you for your video. It's excellent. I'm topping and tailing it, or I was, until I was rudely interrupted by the amazing Austin brothers last night. And I will get that video up into our resources. It's not a far cry, I have to say, Coach Turner, from moonwalking, which Chinese Terry here, who was in the studio, says he can do as well, moonwalking. So maybe we'll get a moonwalking video from him. And I could see the video that you shared with your excellent running style, or teaching people how to run correctly, was not far off Michael Jackson sliding across your... I'll try that again. Not unlike Michael Jackson sliding across your kitchen, which I think a few of you probably tried over the New Year's Eve period. Any other videos of you dancing? I did suggest to Terence that he might start, because he's quite the mover. I saw a video of him dancing, that he might start a disco dad dancing session. I'd definitely sign up for that. God Squad tip of the day then, just to wrap up the appetite discussion from yesterday. The addition of all sorts of chemicals in ultra-processed foods can upset your appetite balance. I think they do it on purpose, don't they? They want to create appetite in you and addiction to certain foods. I know I would if I was a food scientist, but I probably wouldn't be a food scientist in the first place, to be fair. Far be it from me to suggest that here we go, that food manufacturers might take advantage of this, but the best way to avoid the issue is to cook wholesome meals from scratch, much tastier. And yes, I did some of that last night. I cooked some pork lagartos, the nice little strips of pork, roasted with various vegetables like leeks, peppers, a few bits of garlic in there. When the Austin brothers arrived, sort of typically, oh no, we've eaten, thank you. But after a few glasses of wine, yes, it was a perfect end to the evening. Earlier roasted pork, cooked from scratch, you'd have been proud of us, Coach Turner. Much tastier. And yes, they were talking about get the protein, which I think it was something you were talking about yesterday, Coach Turner. If you have a couple of mouthfuls of protein, it changes the course of the rest of your meal. We did that last night. Bit of smoked salmon as well, actually, to go with the wine. Very nice indeed. And we have a pair of great friends raising pigs near Aveiro. It will be very interesting seeing how Lisa finds it. Quite remote. Yeah, with Lisa, she's not far from town. But you can get out and about and into the remote parts, more remote parts away from the canals, can't you? Aveiro, of course, a district as well as a town, city. That looked delicious, Carl. Yes, we saw quite a few different things on the screen last night, didn't we? Food, wine, all sorts of things were going on in a very excellent Good Morning Portugal Wine Club session. Normally first Monday of every month. If you want to join us on screen and talk about a particular wine. We haven't had a wine producer. Here's an invitation to wine producers. If you do have a wine that you'd like the wine club to try in very, very convivial and unpretentious surroundings, then please send it our way. We'll make sure we give it a fair tasting and come onto the screen and tell us about you and your wine production, whatever scale, whether you're somebody from a marketing department of a huge producer here in Portugal or whether you're one of the more independent producers. You'd be very welcome. First Mondays, 8 o'clock. On the Good Morning Portugal YouTube channel and the other places where we put ourselves out, as it were, on the internet. Okay, let's have a look at those news stories then before we welcome Mamabear, who actually is going to be talking specifically about courage. It may have been the keyword of her Christmas, courage. That would be the quality of human being, not a particular kind of beer. Although I don't think many people remember Courage anymore. It's just that my mother and father had a Courage-owned pub, Courage Brewery in Bristol. They had one of those pubs. Anyway, let's have a look at George Branco's news items this morning. And what I think is some very good news. The Algarve foreigners. This is the headline from the Portugal resident. Algarve foreigners want to create political movement. And I think you can probably read that at a number of levels. And it's right in line with the Portugal Immigrant Network that we've been talking about as part of our Portugal Club development and work as well. But before we go there, let's have a read of Jorge Branco's news headlines that he's chosen. Oh, no, sorry. I've just clicked on the button that says read in the app. I'm going to stay with a safe email here and tell you about the flu surge that puts pressure on hospitals. Flu has come back in force this winter, apparently leaving people seriously ill and filling up hospital emergency rooms. Diario de Noticias reports the first influenza A type A cases started appearing in October, apparently sparking warnings from health professionals that vaccination coverage wasn't high enough among those most at risk. The lack of coverage is now being felt in hospitals, they say, where the majority of interned patients are unvaccinated, some of which are warning they're struggling to manage beds. Now, this not George Branco speaking anymore, but I noticed there is not a big take-up in any of the vaccines on offer at the moment, interestingly. It seems like the public have lost interest for one reason or another in taking up the offer of those. Lots of money's been spent on them, and there is a lower take-up, I think, across Europe, billions with this. And interestingly, George notes as well, Portugal was the only one of the 20 European countries on the Euro Momo database, don't know what that is, sorry, with very high excess mortality. Now, this is something that's concerned me for a long time now, and talking of the doc as I was last night, I have put it to the doc. And he cast his doctorly eye over it when he was on the show with me, possibly a year ago now, when it came to excess deaths and excess mortality. Portugal was the only one of the 20 European countries on the Euro-Momo database with very high excess mortality in the last week of 2023. And that was from a Diario de Noticias report. Experts said the high level of respiratory infections appeared to be part of the problem, but the exact cause still wasn't known. And with the scale of this, it really surprises me. It seems to me that there are far more people who are being stricken than there were in the pandemic, which caused the whole of society to close down. And there are these mysterious and unexplained and sudden deaths, and not the same public health concern or outcry. Interesting stuff. And that's the first of George's news headlines there. President appeals to voters, new right-wing alliance forms. President Marcelo Rebelo de Sousa has begun the year with an appeal for the Portuguese to make their votes count in the year where electors go to the polls for national, Azorian and European elections, Publica reports. He left a message for the government. It's like he leaves a little note on the desk of the Parliament building, or maybe for the Speaker. Could you read this out when you've got a moment? He left a message for the government, which was dissolved, not the message, but the government, after Prime Minister Antonio Costa's resignation over the Operation Influencer investigation. Operation Influencer, not Operation Influenza, and not linked to the last story. Don't think so anyway. Marcelo called for effective access to health, education and housing, saying democracy should be synonymous with less poverty, injustice, corruption and disillusionment among the youth. Well, get on with it then, you lot. The outgoing PM refused to comment on the declarations the following day, Publica reports. Instead, he highlighted the urgent need to push ahead with a high speed. Yes, haven't got time to think about health, education and housing. And dealing with poverty, injustice, corruption and disillusionment among the youth. I need to push ahead with a high-speed rail link between Lisbon and Porto immediately before the elections. Maybe a tax cut. So chuck a tax cut in there as well, or the talk of something like that. 3 right-wing parties have signed a coalition agreement in an attempt. It's not funny, really, is it? 3 right-wing parties have signed a coalition agreement in an attempt to defeat the governing Socialist Party, the PS, at the upcoming elections. And again, from Publica reporting, the Democratic Alliance, AD, combines the main opposition Social Democratic Party, the PSD, CDS, the People's Party. I do like the sound of that one. Yay, People's Party. And the People's Monarchist Party. That can't be a big party here in Portugal, I wouldn't have thought. But there you go, the PPM. It is valid throughout the current political cycle until 2028. The text of the agreement calls for political change. Well, there's an original thought. There's a pattern forming that I've seen here throughout my life when in relation to politics. And why is it that they don't have to ask to come onto the news and be invited? The news just is about politics now. That's another thing, isn't it? Politics used to be a part of the news, and now it is the news, isn't it? It's just like that's just what news people talk about, it would seem, especially at this time of the year and this time in the world. With 40 or so major elections going on in 2024. It's quite the turbulent year, not least here in Portugal, and with European elections as well. So the text of that agreement calls for political change, with a, what do we want? Change. When do we want it now? Oh, they didn't deliver the change they promised. Oh, what do we want? Change. Yay. With a majority government that's ambitious, reformist, moderate, stable, and majority. The political group described itself as the only option to unseat PS, which it criticised for the housing crisis. Hold on, I thought us foreigners were to blame for that. Degradation of the social welfare state and the inability to implement reforms, among other complaints. What's interesting to me about this is the same old problems, isn't it? But using the same old solutions to try and change them. There might be a problem with this, everybody. The agreement, I'm sounding like Russell Brand now, aren't I? Come on, you lovely awakened beings. The agreement, sounding more like David Bellamy. The agreement would guarantee a return to Parliament for CDS-PP, which is what they're called, which formed part of the Passos Coelho government in the first half of the last decade, but failed to elect any MPs in 2022. Meanwhile, lonely on the left bloc has proposed a deal with PS in what would be a partial return to the Geringonça government in power before Antonio Costa won a majority in 2022, at which point most people glaze over and go and do something else, like have a drink. That's the way we do politics here in Portugal, isn't it? Courage was based in Godalming, Surrey, and Courage Breweries. You only have to say a keyword, and that gets the on this occasion, Waldorf and Statler in the chat talking. Courage Breweries dominated the public houses in the southeast. It was interesting in the late 80s how they changed to Aussie Beer. Colt 45 they also had, I think, as well, didn't they, under license. Tenerife, Lanzarote, and Gran Canaria have brought in compulsory mask wearing due to a high flu. But we know that doesn't make any difference, don't we now? Or does it? I don't know. And in certain areas, it's partly due to reduced immunity, but also naturally cold and flu multiplies more in winter. That's something we certainly can observe over time, right? That's the body tends to, react to this time of year and the weather, the climate. I see Em's blowing her nose as if to demonstrate the fact behind the scenes at the moment. Bit of a sniffle, maybe. They had a pretty big brewery in Barnes too, Andy. Oh, I remember smelling that one. Gary, sorry about your glass. Well, and I'm sorry about your glasses. Can you see me this morning, Gary, when you look into the screen? Because I believe I have your spectacles here. Well, hey! And your umbrella. Excellent evening. Good to see you. Now, moving from politics, tired old politics, to something that I was very excited to see in the news yesterday. And it's on our homepage among our news picks of the last week. But I'll go straight to the source, as it were, with not that kind of source, this kind of source, the news source here. The Algarve foreigners who want to create a political movement. And we'll be talking to the gentleman with the T-shirt there, second from the left, on the Portugal Club this evening at 8 o'clock. 8:30 actually, we have a check-in of the Portugal Club, and we've got some new members, which is lovely, at 8 this evening. And 8:30 we'll be talking to Paolo, who you're going to hear about in just a moment. Albufeira Group hopes to kickstart expat movement across the region. Who doesn't like an expat movement first thing in the morning? A group of foreigners in Albufeira is gearing up to create a political movement. I think they need a better turn of phrase than that. Maybe that was Natasha Don saying that, just sneaking a little giggle into her news reporting, to run in the 2025 municipal elections. The plan is for an association that truly represents the 54 nationalities living in the borough. Well, that's a truly multicultural place, is it not? Albufeira, then, with 54 nationalities addressing issues that relate to Albufeira's non-Portuguese. Look at this, which now make up 40% of the resident population. Now, this has been of interest to us because I've taken the view that with a national level, with approaching 1 in 10 people being a foreigner, it would be good to get to know more about each other and to work directly, purposefully, mindfully with our native Portuguese neighbours and friends as well, and talk about this and have a lot of fun actually discovering each other's cultures and create better understanding. Because if my suspicion with this is if you don't do that, it happens anyway, and perhaps not in the most positive of ways sometimes, as huge numbers of people integrate into any existing culture. So I think we should be mindful about that. And we've got Paolo here, and I like the cut of his jib and the way he's going about that. And it's interesting to see that there are 54 nationalities in Albufeira. It's like a little Petri dish model, isn't it, of what's going on and what's possible here. 40% then of those 54 nationalities of that resident population in Albufeira, their ambition is that this idea could spread to other municipalities in the region. Well, we'll have some of that up here as well, Paolo, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about it tonight, all of which have significant foreign populations. SIC Notícias trailed the story of the group that is now around 1,500 members on Facebook. That was at the 6th of January, hearing that this is not just about foreigners and with financial wherewithal. Isn't it interesting? The first thing people sometimes make synonymous with foreigners is financial wherewithal. It's also about nationalities that have come here to find a better life and live often on the margin of society, who you might not hear so much about, right? And again, another good reason to lift the lid, to have conversations and to find out what's really going on. Those who need help and support without knowing where to find it. This is what the association is about. Alyssa Scutt told SIC. Is she part of the, is that the name of the toll roads as well, the Scutts? It will be a way of helping foreigners of all kinds better integrate into their new lives. Well, we like the sound of that. Albufeira Mayor, meanwhile, José Rolo, has told SIC that the municipality already has a service to immigrants open every day. That must be frustrating for José Rolo, He has a service open every day designed to give the information that's needed to the people we've just mentioned, including financial support. But the association considers that foreigners taking these issues into their own hands and taking them to the seats of local power could be exactly what the non-Portuguese population needs. So it's certainly the local authority. It sounds like as a trickle down from national policy. The will is there, is it not, from the government and local government to help people and connect with people? But it may be that it's not happening in quite the right way to have the right amount of take up with that. And so these folks have taken this into their own hands. We'll be talking to Paolo from that movement tonight. I can't see what their name is apart from Group of Foreigners in Albufeira. And actually, as I recall, on Facebook, their name is something like that. They're going to have to come up perhaps with something a little more snappy than that. So says Sick then to conclude here, beyond the ambition of running for municipal elections is the hope that Albufeira's movement travels to neighbouring boroughs, as was previously mentioned in the article. So I'll be keeping a close eye on that and looking forward to that conversation this evening. Let's see what's going on in the chat as well. Antonio is here. What do you make of that, Antonio? Bon dia a todos. And I noticed this recently in Caldas Terrena. There seemed to be some sort of foreigner centre where you could get help. But it wasn't obvious. I mean, that's just one of the ironies, isn't it, of being a foreigner and not being able to understand when you walk past a foreigner help centre, because you don't understand the culture or the language. So there you are, thinking to yourself, maybe right outside the foreigner help centre, wouldn't it be nice if there was a foreigner help centre? And there it is, behind you, Squire of the Shires. Also, nice to see you last night. You popped in. OLP was on the call. We had Nubianet and we had Squire of the Shires. Morning, Squire. How are you? Manhã, boa povo. I like your turn of phrase there, trying different things out. And of course, yes, we launched yesterday the Elephant in the Room. I think we've had a pretty good reception. Didn't hear from you about this, Antonio. Or Elefante na sala, the elephant in the room then, when it comes to speaking or not speaking Portuguese. Have we got that right? And before we get started with the main business of helping people speak Portuguese with the help of a baby elephant, which I hope you find endearing, is that right? Is that the right way to say in Portuguese, the elephant in the room? So learn Portuguese with James Holly and Carl Munson. And this is inspired by getting beyond the first bit, which has been happening to us for months now on the Monday morning. Olá, bom dia, tudo bem? Muito bem, obrigado. And then, oh, right, what do I say now? Yeah, just look down into my beer, as James is doing there. That was when he was trying Guinness, actually. It wasn't because he couldn't speak Portuguese. That picture was actually taken to let you in on what was going on behind the scenes. That's, I think, in Dublin. And I think he speaks Irish anyway, so he was fine there. He was just considering whether he liked Guinness or not, I think, in its rightful place. But this book, The Elephant in the Room, is going to take us way beyond this with the help of our Portuguese friends like Antonio here. So is that okay there, Antonio? Elefante na sala, the elephant in the room. My first translation was o elefante no quarto, which is the elephant in the bedroom, which could get us an entirely different audience. One I'm not sure I want. Other photographs that have come in will include Pam was talking about getting the accents right, talking of learning the language. She has customized. You can get keyboard stickers. You can get a few breadcrumbs as well by the look of that, Pam. That wants a Hoover out. But that's her way of making sure that she's got the right accents in a Portuguese style on her keyboard. Thank you for that. And our friend Tony has been in Madeira. I've got more pictures and a little bit of video. I'm putting them together in a little montage. But there's a little sneak peek of his time in Madeira. Isn't that beautiful? It looks so lush, verdant, and delicious, basically, Madeira. I want to go there one day. And when we had Ali on last Thursday from Snapshot magazine, husband Dave had photographed this wonderful place as well. Whose name escapes me. That's from Paul. Paul Richards sent that in to us. Thank you very much, Paul. And I'm trying to... Oh, yeah, Paul Richards, who also sent a picture of me and James and an elephant, actually. It was a slightly more grown-up elephant. But that is Praia da Cordoama. It's a photogenic place for all photographers, and that's Paul Richards' rendering of it there. That is beautiful, isn't it? And what looks like a castle there, and an ogre standing to the side of it, as I recall Ali saying. So thank you very much in that first half hour there for your input. Keep the comments coming in, if you will. Gary Austin's here. I have a bag of fruit for you from the Austin Estates. I'll drop it over later. Oh, have you got any? I'm talking to a man, or have been talking to a man, who wants to grow more apples and pears for export out to Brazil. Have you got? Do you want to lease him a bit of space over at your gaff there in central Portugal, Gary? Yeah, and you might want to get your I nearly said testicles. You might want to get your spectacles back from the studio. Hopefully your testicles aren't here. Hopefully they're healthily attached to you. Bom dia de novo this morning. Negative temperatures in the night today in Bragança, Guarda and Castelo Branco region. So a weather warning from Antonio F. Jack Polly. Bon dia, it's raining in Portimao today. So a day staying inside. Studying what exactly? The Price is Right? I wonder. Tell us, what are you studying Portuguese maybe, Jack? And looking forward to seeing you soon at the Flavors of India special on the 17th in Caldas de Rainha. Good morning, people from a cold and grey Lisbon and Lee. Cold enough this morning, but no frost. You'll soon warm up with work and coffee. Some impressive chopper work on TikTok this morning. Oh, has he been publishing TikTok? Send us those and we'll stick them up on, we'll play them here as well. If you've got those for us, Lee, as well. Bon dia, Squire. Last night was messy, but we're so over it. We're putting it behind us. A little cup of tea and a nice, quiet and easygoing chat with Mama Bear. So let's give her a big round of applause. I'm going to turn this down in my headphones. I can tell you that. Here she is. Good morning, Mamabear McGowan. How are you?
Morning. Not bad.
Morning. Have you got a little bit of a sore throat there?
A little bit.
It's a bit early morning-ish.
No, it's I've got a bit of a cold and a cough.
Okay. A seasonal thing, the body adjusting to the new part of the year. I'm guessing you're back in Portugal there?
Yeah, I think this is germs from the UK. I don't think it's Portuguese germs.
Well,
so
how thoughtful of you to bring back a party bag of British germs to central Portugal. But that's how we do it. What's not going to kill us makes us stronger, right? And I think did you have your Christmas back in Blighty?
Yeah, I did. It was very different to what I'm used to, but lovely. Being with both grandparents, which is pretty rare, to have two grandmothers alive.
Yes.
And
yeah, definitely
be able to be with them both. And my mum's birthday's Christmas Day, so and then seeing my daughter as well. And then seeing New Year and watching Jules Holland I've not done that for years.
You've got to take a look at his hootenanny. I think that's what he calls it, isn't it? His New Year celebration. So yeah, quite the contrast. And last time we saw you, let's face it, you're a little bit upset, weren't you? There were quite some challenges going on, and I think were we able to help with with the community, or was the expat foreigner community generally able to help in your moment of need then?
Yeah, James has been a star, and it was great to talk with him. I mean, I disappeared pretty much a few days after speaking with you and was in England. And now I'm back and I've been here a few days now. So it's just adjusting back to Portugal,
And of course, the two lifestyles that I guess have been the big contrast. The one you wanted to leave the UK for, to come and live in rural peace and tranquility, although it has come with its challenges, as we've heard about over the last few months. And what, I don't know if you call it the rat race or whatever, but what's that contrast like between your rural life here in Portugal and your taste of the old world that you came from in the UK? What was that like?
That's hard because it's ironic, I suppose, because I left here to get space, which if I'd have been thinking straight, it just wouldn't have happened. So I left my space and where there's nice and peace and quiet and no light pollution, no noise apart from nature. And I landed in cars, sirens, and fridges and all those noises that happen in a house, and then people, lack of privacy, constant lack of privacy. It's, and I was thinking, well, be careful what you wish for, you know what I mean? As much as I got all the beautiful things that I'm so grateful for, that Christmas with my nana and my mom and my dad and my other nana and seeing my daughter, and New Year with my nana, and then it's like I get back and it's just like, can I hear that? No, beautiful.
Sound of silence.
And
I can hear your birds. It does sound. It sounds lovely. If that doesn't sound odd.
And then and then having Batty, back to Mr. Batty and his snuggles, and I can't see him actually. He's up to something somewhere. Oh, there he is. He's asleep, snuggled behind the laptop. He's that small, isn't he? He hides behind the laptop. But he's not far from me. He's always cuddling up, and it's so good to be back with Mr. Batty.
Excellent.
So,
and it just sounds like you're very accustomed to the peace. And I'm reminded, I was listening to the Diary of a CEO podcast last night, because it was a particularly interesting one with Alain de Botton, Alan the Bottom. And he's been talking about humans and happiness for quite a long time, Alain de Botton. He's a philosopher, isn't he? But I think he's specialized in human happiness. And would you say that how you live in central Portugal is quite a natural way for human beings, and the one that you went back to over Christmas is the one that we've developed for ourselves, but doesn't necessarily suit the human spirit and soul so much? And that's exactly what you might have experienced.
Over here, I think is it the circadian rhythm? So you're sleeping with the sun.
Circadian rhythms. Yes.
And you live according to where the sun is. So you're getting up in the morning with the sun, walking the dogs, as I did this morning. It's beautiful start to the day. And as the sun's going down, you're settling down for the night, snuggling in, and getting yourself comfortable. You get back to my nana's staying up way later than me, and everyone's like, my nana was wanting to stay up and party till 2 a.m. for New Year, and I was wanting to go to bed at 7 o'clock, and I was I'd still not adjusted. So for me, I really like my early nights in winter, and I like to just sleep with the sun, and I like to be able to be away from all the light pollution and just be able to hear things like the birds and and the trees and the grass. You don't get to hear that because you can't, because everything's too busy. You go for a walk and you go for a walk to just enjoy walking, and everyone's so busy walking and so busy doing their walk, and they're walking with such purpose and talking to each other. They haven't got a clue where they are. You may as well stick them on a walking machine or a running machine in a gym somewhere, because they've not took a moment to see anything. And I'd seen this tree that had blown down, and people were walking past and thought, what's that? And I slowed and I just stopped, and I was stood there watching this little squirrel that I think had been blown out of his house during that storm. And I was just watching it going about its business, and everyone was walking past it unaware it was even there. And they were like 3 meters from a squirrel, and all the wildlife just going on about its business, and the people are absolutely oblivious to the fact that this was going on. And maybe what's really going on for them, interesting to witness that.
Yeah, they might have been just seeing what they thought was a crazy woman staring at a tree. And that's perhaps where we've got to, isn't it? Is that, that there is such a disconnection. So perhaps that can be a thing for this coming year. I love, one of the great things about chatting to you on the Good Morning Portugal show is chatting to you in your natural environment, as it were, and hearing this overwhelming silence, which is a strange sort of poetic sort of irony, isn't it? That I can hear the birds. And when you've taken us on a little tour with your phone, it is definitely quiet in a really nice way where you live. So that must have been quite the contrast for you. And that's how us humans learn, I suppose, isn't it? Is to have contrast in our lives. And it sounds like you had more than your fair share of that over the Christmas period.
Yeah, it's good to be reminded, like, and to notice and still take time to be grateful. There's beautiful things happening in both places. Wherever we are, there's always beautiful things happening in that moment. And it's just the beautiful things that happen, I find more comfortable here. I feel more at ease. This feels safer to me. Like I can hear and I'm tuned with the way of things. And I didn't sleep properly any night that I was back in the UK. And when I got back here and I got batty, and I could hear the trees and the wind and the everything that you hear here at night, owl and that. I was sleeping, and I've slept well all night, you know.
Yeah, fantastic.
And I feel more alive again, and that's beautiful, you know.
It is. It's
There's
fantastic.
something
I'm so
about
glad you're back.
It's environment. It's the importance of our environment and how it affects our health mentally and physically. It's I think it's called terrain theory. Because there's more than what's going on physically in our body. It's what's going on all around us in our fairly close environment and our environment that stretches out. So my environment here, you know, I'm not affected by cars or people or anything. But as soon as you go back into somewhere, as soon as you leave somewhere as beautiful as this, you get the beauty of, well, light pollution, the intensity of the lights, intensity of the sound. It's like you're walking through a TV advert or something. I mean, I don't have a telly here, but everything's like trying to sell you something. So you know, everything, like sides of shops are lit up, and now that it's not just, you know, how it used to be like big posters on billboards. Now most billboards are like TV screens, and you've got all these moving pictures everywhere and all these lights trying to draw your attention from things. And when you're used to just hanging out with trees and animals, and you go into that, you kind of pulled in so many different directions. You don't really know where you're at.
Well, someone was
so
telling me the other day. Yeah, they were in Lisbon, and their phone started delivering them. No, they said not their phone. Their phone alerted the marketing people to their location, and they felt they were being served particular ads from some of these electronic devices in some of these areas as well, which I don't know if that's. I mean, I know that's possible, and it's something from it's a kind of Blade Runner image, isn't it? But what you're reminding me of is when I was a kid, I used to watch Tarzan. Which of course we know is quite ridiculous in many ways, but one of the amazing things was seeing him being taken to the city and his reaction. And it sounds like you being taken from from the rural central Portugal, back to the UK as it is now, and having a similar sort of sociological shock going on there. So very interesting contrast. We've got Peda with us this morning, Peda ap Lôn, and with a bon dia Borada in Welsh Wales this morning. Good to see you here, Peda, and I think you probably want to live in a similar way to M here, out in the middle of nowhere, and in the sticks, and have a nice quiet rural life. It sounds beautiful the way you've been describing it, and of course not without its challenges, as we've been discovering over the last few months as well. It's another one of these polar things, isn't it? You have to live in the countryside with a lot of challenge, or live in the city with all its convenience, but pay different kinds of prices and make different sorts of compromises. I want to also talk to you about Care and Share, Share and Care over on Facebook, because it's a new year, and as I was saying before, the excess deaths, sudden deaths, this is I think as shocking a time in many ways as it was a shock during the COVID pandemic time. I at the beginning of the year, I was aware of 3 deaths just going into the new year. And I think it's always been important, the work you've been doing and that Debs was endeavouring to do with sharing care. And I think it's going to remain important. And I know you've also been, focusing a lot on self-care and looking after yourself, which is absolutely right. Have you had time as well to think about sharing care for this year and any objectives? Because I'm right there with you in this regard. If whatever we need to do with it,
I just I stuck a few whenever I see something or I think of something that might be helpful, I stick it up. But the thing is, people don't use it, and I use it, and it's the same few people, and it's a free resource where people could, if they want, access so much help and support for their grief, for their support with serious illnesses, for just managing the change. And it seems that the people that want to stick up adverts on there, want to sell their services, well, it's a free group that's free services for people to access. It's not about the money. It's about a community service. It's about people in the community supporting people in the community and coming together, sharing the love, sharing the skills, and just being there for one another. So that's how it's going to stay. Right? Yeah. It's not going to be about getting money out of people. It's not about sending people to paid services. You're more than capable of finding paid services. Yes. There's loads of them out there. I don't promote myself on there either. It's not about that. It's about just being there and having that safe space, which is so important. So please, people, start joining us and start having that courage. I suppose the first time we can use the word, having the courage to show up and be vulnerable and just say something like, I'm feeling like this, or just wanted to say hello, or anything, or today's the anniversary of, or it's coming up to, or I've lost such a body, or I'm worried about such a thing, or healthcare. Whatever it is, share that. Yeah, share that. If it's to do with your health and well-being, share it. It's not about looking for a lift to somewhere, but if you want to be able to access genuine support, find people in your area to connect with, anything like that, that's what it's there for. That's what it's there to do. If you need help trying to sort out funerals, sending ashes back, finding memorial gardens, anything at all like that, drop us a message. That's
I think the birds agree. The birds have suddenly got very noisy over there in central Portugal. So I think that we have validation from nature. I'm going to put the link to sharing care. And so all of what Em was talking about there, this is available on Facebook. And if some people don't want to be on Facebook, you can email me as well, Carl at goodmorningportugal.com. I mean, we're here every morning. If anyone needs any help, basically of any kind, and more specifically, there's the Facebook group there. If you find yourself in need with some of the things, I mean, we can characterize this, can't we? By if you're in need of help with some of the things we don't normally talk about, it would appear that's quite a good definition of what sharing care is all about there on Facebook. Now, you mentioned courage, Em. Is this been a particular thing for you? Is that almost like a resolution for you going into 2024? You strike me as a very courageous woman, anyway.
I don't do resolutions, New Year's, because every day is a new opportunity to start again. So I'm not the type of person that likes to have to wait for something to come along. The time is now. We might never get to New Year. We might not get to see 2025. What can we do today to make our life better? What can we do today to take responsibility for ourselves? And how can we show up? How can we have the courage to show up when we really don't feel like showing up? Because courage to you might look like just getting out of bed in the morning.
Yep.
And on days like that, like, I'm cheering you on. And on days where courage is going off on a hike, you know, across Portugal, brilliant. But whatever it is, it's having the courage to show up, you know. And it's hard to, communication is difficult, and communication doesn't have to be as difficult as we tell ourselves it can be, because we make assumptions of how we think it might be based on previous experience. But there's people like myself who were trained in communication, who were perfectly open to listen and to hear you. You can be heard. It is a safe space. You can speak in complete privacy. And if you've got stuff going on which is maybe making you feel suicidal, or maybe you're just not so sure about things to do with your health and things, reach out. You know, if you need a friend to listen to, reach out, because you shouldn't have to be alone. And I've said this for years, and I usually offer an open house over Christmas and New Year, so people can drop in. But this year I went to the UK. But it's really important that we don't have to give someone and open and be completely vulnerable and share our inner souls, but having the courage sometimes just to allow someone to see you as you are in the moment, and know that that can happen without being judged. That can make a massive difference.
And what a difference that would make to the whole world of people as well, of course. And I don't know what your it's hard to do a scientific study of this, but I think anecdotally, and from people's own experience, funny thing is, whenever people have got to, and it's a funny and sad thing in a way that it takes this, but when people have got to rock bottom or have become desperate and opened up and reached out for help, it's usually gone quite well, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. The thing is, a lot of people think that there's something wrong or something bad about asking for help, and shame stops us asking for help, or we feel guilty because we think we've done something bad, so our guilt prevents us from reaching out. And sometimes by reaching out and just willing to be just a little bit vulnerable with just that one person who's a trusted person, we can realize that our shame and or our guilt are non-existent. They you know, they were there, but we kind of made it up because there was nothing bad or wrong, and we have every right to feel the way that we do.
Yeah.
So however you feel, it's valid, and there's a space for that, and there's someone to listen to you.
There you go. There's the invitation. We like to pride ourselves generally on being that sort of community. I think we're going to need it anyway in the times that we're going into. And the video I mentioned before, funnily enough, a lot of what we're talking about this was mentioned on this Diary of a CEO podcast that I was listening to yesterday. But it's called "Why You Have Love and Relationships All Wrong." But it goes into a lot of what we're talking about. I guess that's a slightly clickbaity title, but the link is there. It's very good. And he was talking about how we live in a meritocracy now, where in centuries of old, the poor were called the unfortunate. And he used the example of how in America, now if you're not successful, you're a loser. Whereas before, it was unfortunate that you were in that situation, perhaps, because luck hadn't gone your way. And I think we live in a society now, don't we, where people, as you said, feel more and more guilty about their things not turning out in quite the way they wanted them to, or other people wanted things to turn out for them. And the burden of guilt with these things is felt quite personally and not collectively. And I guess the only place, and now with us metaphorically backed up against a wall with this as all being individuals trying to make sense of things, the only place to go is back towards each other now, isn't it? We've kind of maybe reached peak individuality, and the time has
We're
come.
human beings. No, there's nothing wrong with individuality. There's nothing wrong with autonomy. What we need is connection, and we need acceptance of who we are, and we need that being able, because we're all trying to be like each other and feeling bad because I'm not like them, or we're trying to push people away because they're right, or I'm right and they're wrong. And when it comes down to it, the more we can be in acceptance of each other as we are and meet each other as we are, and realize it's not down to luck, because luck is just doesn't really exist unless you break it down into living under cosmic knowledge. And then luck is something. Living under cosmic knowledge, you've taken your power back. It's not down to something called fate. You've got the capability, you've got the capacity to just change things by reframing things through consciously creating your own world. That is how life can change when you look at things like that. It's about being vulnerable, but being vulnerable means that you have to be willing to take an emotional risk. You're willing to expose yourself, and you've also got to be okay that you don't know. So when we can show up and with that vulnerability, it's not being weak at all. That is pure courage. And it takes that courage to show up as we are, and the right people will accept us for that. It takes a lot of courage to get up and show up in the morning. It takes a lot of courage to try new things. It takes a lot of courage to move to a new country. It takes a lot of courage to do podcasts and put yourself out there and share what you believe you would like to see in the world. It takes a lot of courage to be true to yourself, because it's so easy to follow the crowd. And when we do that, we neglect what matters, and what matters is our core values, and what matters is our gut is always guiding us in the right direction. But we forget about that because we tell ourselves we're wrong, and we have all the shame and guilt as well.
And that's what those big billboards are for, isn't it, Em? We've got telling you.
Yes, those billboards to convince you that you don't need to live under cosmic knowledge. You need to buy.
You need to buy this. Buy this now.
Yeah, you need to buy this. You need to change how you look. I mean, for goodness sake, the world's telling men that they're weak and they're not strong enough. And man, I know so many men are so strong and have got so much courage, and they show up and they allow themselves to be vulnerable. And I have got so much love and respect for these kind of genuine guys who listen, who care, and who keep showing up in the world. And it takes a lot of courage to do that in today's society, where you're told men can't cry, and where men are told to hide their feelings. And there's women being told that they should look thin, and they should have white teeth, and they should I don't know, go to yoga or something and be able to turn themselves into a human pretzel and stuff like that. And it's all the BS. It's the belief systems that we're coming across in the world that are trying to convince us that we should be something that we're not. And what we actually are is, when we're true to ourselves, we're amazing, loving beings who just need to connect and be seen and loved for who we are.
Oh, yes. I think we could stop the show there, couldn't we, if we wanted to? That's a perfect note to start the day with, because we've got Jack asking about morning routines. But that's I want to go back and rewind to that, to your soliloquy there, because I think it's great guidance. But we have a few comments, and we might have Lisa joining us from the Montefrio Alpaca Center in near Aveiro this morning. But I'm loving the always love where you take us with your conversation here, Em. So these aren't the great Garvo's spectacles here. They would appear to be Terence's and his brolly as well. He had a good evening. He left his glasses and I mean, look, publicans must have to get used to a big box of spectacles and brollies left in the pub. It's like that here this morning in the studio. She apparently this morning is set opposite me, looking at his laptop like some sort of mole that has emerged to the surface for a while. Sounds like he's not speaking very much this morning. I was an astute beer lager drinker after the man cave. Now, like the vino, I got to learn not to drink like a fish. Yeah, I guess there is a bit of a transition to make there. Drinking wine like a fish could get you into quite a lot of trouble and ill health. Yes, we were actually, one of the lovely things about the wine club is definitely our sense of appreciation. We're definitely more about quality than quantity, although the quantity was quite impressive as well. Sometimes coming back, this is referring to what you were saying earlier on, and the contrast of going away and coming back to the place that we love, that we've built for ourselves. Sometimes coming back from a holiday just reminds you how lucky you are when you get back. And welcome back, Mike and Dee, who are doing exactly that this morning. Lovely to see that you're back in the country. Our mate's son, after a month in Israel, ran back to their farm rapturous in the space and tranquility. Just sounds like a little creature, a lamb gambling in the fields there. And we do love that image, don't we? When animals do that. Jack says, Jack Polly, we look forward to going back to the UK to visit family. The minute we get there, we can't wait to come back to Portugal. You don't need to live in the rat race. Well said there, Jack. Verdad, says Peter. And Sarah, liking your luck living under cosmic knowledge there. And maybe we can ask you how to do that more this morning, Em. How do you start your day is a good question to ask as well. Grateful, thanks, appreciation, a walk on the beach, in the park. Enjoy this day. And hit that like button, says Antonio. And Mama Bear, I love the wisdom you're sharing. Absolute alchemy this morning. So we do have Lisa joining us from Montefrio Alpacas. Are you going to stay and join that conversation with us, Em? Good, because I think Lisa probably will be all right talking about how to start the day. And I suspect she lives under cosmic knowledge. Let's find out now. Let's give her a nice big round of applause. Hello to you.
Good morning. Happy New Year.
Yeah, why not? It's lovely to see you, Lisa. It's been too
Likewise.
long. Yes.
I know. Oh, bless you.
And I don't know if you've ever been on the Good Morning Portugal show, which is a terrible omission on my part. You haven't, have you?
No, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm not the best front of stage, but I can get over it. When it's with you and it's stimulating, I know. It can move mountains.
So lovely to see you. And I was trying to recall earlier on how it was that we met. And I can't remember. But what I do remember is visiting you at the Montefrio Alpaca Farm Centre just outside of Aveiro, probably, my goodness, 6 years ago, something like that now. And having a fabulous day with you with the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a while back.
It is.
I don't know how you got hold of me, but because that then just led on to Dear Michael.
Yes.
It just opens doors, doesn't it?
Absolutely beautiful how things have
unfolded. You haven't been to our new place, have you? You're well overdue a visit.
I thought I did. I thought I came and I had a brief visit to your new place. But you may have a new place. I don't know. But for people who don't know you, here I am talking to you about the Montefrio Alpaca Farm as if everyone knows it. I'm not sure they do. Could you tell us how it is that you got to be the alpaca lady here in Portugal? Because it's a good story, isn't it?
It is, and I'll try and keep it as brief as possible.
Yes. Okay.
So it was. We decided to move to Portugal as a family, and I had a family already in the Algarve. We had a history of a lot of Portuguese students, Erasmus students, living with my grandparents at the time, which so gave an affinity with the Portuguese. So they retired here in the Algarve, and we decided to follow suit. And I wanted to bring a micro business. I wanted to bring something to inspire that was a little bit different. And my passion for wool started as a teenager, and the whole textile industry, from the beginnings, from production, be it fiber from animal or from plant. I'm very interested because in London, that was the arena that I worked in within the textile world. And so it was an opportunity to make it a living. And originally I looked at Angora rabbits, but decided that the kind of farming you use with Angora rabbits is not very sympathetic. And I wanted a ecological permaculture-based farm structure. So then I looked at Angora goats, and Angora goats don't set a fine fiber in warmer climates. They need a really cold climate to make a good fleece.
Interesting.
So they were out, yeah. And then the birth of my third son, we had to go into hospital after he was born, just for a couple of weeks. And there was no space. So we were put in the premature baby unit, and there was all these tiny, tiny babies, and they were all dressed in synthetic fiber, because premature babies can't actually regulate their body temperature.
Yeah.
At that time, I happened to be reading an article about alpacas. So this is post-partial, life-changing decisions made 2 weeks after giving birth to my son. And I looked at the qualities of alpaca wool, and they regulate their body temperature by 7 degrees from the heat and from the cold, because they experience extreme heat conditions in South America. And then I started looking a bit deeper and a bit deeper, and they became the animals of choice. And so we came over with a dozen alpacas, and it was 6 years of intense learning, because having grown up in London, I had no idea about farming, especially in a foreign country with 3 small children. So it was a big, big learning curve on the top of a mountain.
It's a movie. It's a movie. Hold on a minute.
Well,
three young children. 3 young children and 6 alpacas. You brought them over. What did you have? Where are the alpacas from then?
They were from the UK, and I looked at a lot of farms, and I came across a lady called Lisa also, and she's my hero. And she was the first lady to have alpacas in the UK, because it was prohibited for them to be exported up until 1995 into Europe. And she was the first lady to have alpacas in Europe. And my Tor, who is my alpha male, who's my darling, and he's the front man, alpaca, that is.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, just clarifying.
The Viking boyfriend tour. No, the alpaca.
Yeah.
Okay, we got that straight.
Yeah, the alpaca. Yeah. His grandfather was the first to come into the UK. So our experience of alpacas in Europe is really small. It's a very short period of time we've had them. So they're really new animals. And I work a lot with the veterinary hospitals, the veterinary colleges, the ministry, to educate and to help, so we can gain as much information about these animals as possible here in Portugal. I would love to see these little kinters reproduced. The idea is to promote sustainable farming that has a diversity within it. So it allows people to live in the countryside and make a living. It's
Wonderful.
not easy.
No, this is what we were talking about. Yeah, because it's so contrasted or polar, isn't it? It's like, go struggle in the countryside, and that's why people are leaving the countryside, isn't it? That's why the Portuguese are leaving the countryside, is because they can't make a living. I mean, it's hard enough making a living in the city for Portuguese people, let alone staying in the countryside and doing that. And
I've experienced this, lots and lots of times. I've experienced young Portuguese, and they really want to go back to the villages. They really would like to go back to their roots and do something that feels more akin to their principles in life, and it's very difficult to make a living. And for me, this is something I'm quite passionate about, is that we do have to make a rural economy viable and keep it alive.
Yes.
And these animals help they bring in another form of revenue in lots of different ways. There's a lot of diverse ways you can use them.
That's amazing, Lisa. What a lovely thing to be doing. And I know that's, like with, by the way, meet Lisa, Lisa meet M, Mamabear McGowan.
Hi.
And this is a theme that unites the 3 of us, this regeneration of rurality and a simpler way of life, but a sustainably simple way of life.
Sustainable.
Because
Yeah.
that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, a part of meeting you, I think, in the first place is when we first came to Portugal, we were doing the proverbial, renovating a pile of rocks thing. And so many people are finding that difficult, because it is difficult, basically.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah,
do need a bigger sort of infrastructure or culture, don't we, in which this what you're talking about can be enabled by a community and not individuals, like living or dying by trying it, because it's just so precarious and it's such hard work, and people are vulnerable when they do it alone, and the risk is very high, and the impact is so high on people and couples and families and so on, that
Absolutely.
something bigger. I mean, would you agree? I had no idea until I started really thinking about this, but it does need it needs a bigger picture, doesn't it? A bigger culture in which this can take place. So how do we do that?
My philosophy is live by example, and give people as much as possible the opportunity to taste it, and give them a very genuine picture of what's involved. So don't paint a fluffy picture, but the trials that you go through, I mean, I've been through quite a few trials. It's been very challenging. Pretty much experienced, most of the extremes, all not positive, by the way. But there is a lot of positive along the way also.
Sure.
But through that, I mean, through suffering, you experience a profound amount of experience that you can utilize positively, for others, for my self-growth, for me, as a little example, when one, as a farmer, which is it's a very particular mindset, and you take everything personally. You feel responsible for that piece of land and that crop, and when it fails, you could be really good at like giving yourself a hard time, but nature has a play in that also. You're not the creator. You're only a small part. So learning, it was a life skill for me of how in the past I've taken everything on board as being responsible for the world, and I must do more than is actually mentally, physically, and emotionally possible, to being able to recognize, no, I'm not the only one responsible here, and that was quite hard for me to overcome. I would take every failing very, very personally.
Oh, bless you.
And so there's a lot of self-growth that with farming. I mean, in the UK, farming was, I don't know the current dates, but before I left, farming was the highest rate of suicides, for example.
It's tragic, isn't it? Yeah.
And for me, that is shocking. Here are the people supplying, our food, and they're suffering.
Yes.
And this is corporate, massive conglomerate companies that are. So, I'm really for the small farms, self-management and governance, and promoting rural economy, and the principles of permaculture, where you service your immediate surroundings, and gradually you grow from there.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
Love it. Love that vision. When I'm rich, which won't be long now, because we're summoning up the forces of luck. We're living under, what was it? Cosmic knowledge.
Cosmic knowledge. Yeah.
The funding for this is from wherever it is now, can come into this proposition that you're talking about, because I've not heard it. The picture of it as we're weaving this spell to have this happen, I've not heard it so sort of elucidated, if that's a way of putting it, or elaborated in such a concise way. That's a clear picture, isn't it? We've got Pete talking about it as well. It is hard work. Oh, no, not that one. It's a different one. There is lots of work here in the villages. Yeah, there's no shortage of work, is there? There's no shortage of people, but physically it is a great deal harder, and many old skills are dying off as a result. It is so sad. What's missing is the wisdom and the will, it would appear, wouldn't it? And putting the resources in the right place, and understanding that this would be a useful way for human beings
And
to live their
and
lives.
it's creating a demand.
Okay, say more about that.
Yeah, for sure. For instance, we can take eucalyptus as a very classic example.
Yeah.
We need to switch out the eucalyptus, yeah, and the pine, but there is no incentive because it has a good value, good market value.
Yep.
So how do we switch it out for a different tree, which is going to produce foliage, which is going to drop and create mulch and not going to catch fire so easily? That is a deciduous tree. We have to create a demand for it, and it has to be equal or more than the value of eucalyptus and pine. At the moment, with the way we have value, I mean, I demonstrate this when I do my talks when we're talking about alpacas, my favorite subject. The life of an alpaca starts at €1,000. The life of a sheep, if you buy a lamb, starts at 25, 35 euros. Okay, as an example. So we value the lives monetary. There's a big difference between the two. Yeah. And so our attitude towards those animals can be very different. How, you know, that it's our monetary valuing system that dictates where we go. And until I think we have a bit of a change of heart as to where we place our money, in that way, then if we all put our money in where our real heart was, then we might elevate and change that equation quite rapidly. I make alpaca socks, and they are not cheap. They're not excessively expensive, but they're not €1. Okay.
Yeah, right.
They can't compete with the mass-produced sock. But you know the history, you know the exact animal that sock came from, you know the spinner, which is myself, and the maker of the sock. And that sock is not something you're going to throw away tomorrow when it gets a hole, you know, because I'm not going to let you. I'm going to give you some extra yarn, and I'm going to show you a video of how to darn your socks. And so those socks will stay with you for a long time, and they have a story involved. That you're attached to them. And for me, this is really important that we value. So these new skills, or the old skills, as that chap was saying, people still they're there, but they're not being valued, and we need to make them valuable. And if we want to make them value on the big scale of things, then we need to make some changes as to where we put our money.
Literally our values. It's a change of our values, isn't it? And it's the courage that you were talking about before, Em, I think, isn't it? Which is like, you know, somebody should value these things differently. Well, we're going to have to. It's going to have to be us, isn't it? I think it's going to have to be the people who are seeing this actually doing it. Sorry, Em, go on, carry on.
It's the perception. I was writing notes as you started talking, Lisa, because what you was doing is living under cosmic knowledge, whether you knew it or not. How you started is you followed what made your heart sing, which meant that you were following your core values. So maybe you knew that those were your core values, maybe you didn't. But when you live under cosmic knowledge, it aligns with your core values. Core values take you to the truth of what's at our core, what's at our nature. When we live according to what's our natural truth, instead of what our ego wants with the big for sale signs and the throwaway culture, what we're able to do is live a life which is more valuable. We get more meaning from it. We get more joy. We get more bliss. We get more ease, and we get so much learning, and everything has a higher value to it, because that shit's priceless. Like, you know, living like we do, you can't put a price on this. You can't pay for this in the UK. You know, you come over here and you just got these amazing things, and this is everything in life is impermanent, which sucks sometimes when it's so beautiful. But unless we tune into our values, we're going to lose this. We're going to lose these beautiful noises and this beautiful space that Portugal can gift us, because like places like the UK, you don't walk through many fields before you finding more, and you can't be in a field without hearing sirens or seeing lights very often. There's not many places without light pollution. Portugal is full. It is abundant in places of natural beauty. It is abundant in resources. Like, it is abundant in people who are having the courage to show up and try new things, and are willing to look at trying to find what works for them now, because they wanted to change their lives. And the Portuguese people want to be able to live at home, but they have to move away because they can't afford to live here. If we can try and come together and be more of a community, accepting of who we are, and returning in some ways back to those older values, which is our natural instinct, right, I reckon we're onto a winner. Like, we don't need the lights and the sounds of the cities. We don't need the throwaway culture. We can have things that last.
Yeah,
and
well,
that to me is so important.
And I forgot, this is so important to me, and I forget about it, actually. And I'm so glad we've had this conversation this morning, because I would love to support this move back to the countryside and nurture these Portuguese, young Portuguese, they'd be called entrepreneurs, wouldn't they? But actually, they're just Portuguese people living in the traditional way that they used to live. And our globalized sort of machinery is eking them out of traditional lifestyle that we're all agreeing here is quite a good lifestyle. It's good for the locality. It's good for the individual. It would appear. It was good for the community, and it's good for the planet. It's like kind of win all the way. And yet, as Pete's saying, it's just easier to go and work in a call center in Castelo Branco instead, rather than be a carpenter or a mason's trainee. Skills that should be valuable. And we're the ones, if we can see that, I guess we've got to find a way to have that happen in some way. We rehomed 5 alpacas when we left Colorado, says Bob. So, Bob, good morning to you. Bob, lovely to see you and Vivi this morning. They're remarkably intuitive animals. We were a part of a kids program using alpacas. They would fit extremely well into Em's program as well. So maybe you probably don't need that right now, Em, right? Is a new alpaca family joining you.
Yeah, I think I might need a bit more weight on me and to sort out the land, but that's where I'm at.
In the future, maybe, yeah. Alpaca fleece is the best natural insulating fiber. I'm sure we don't need to tell Lisa that. I frostbit a finger on a mountain rescue once and used alpaca fleece in my glove for the rest of the winter to work and keep that finger warm. That's lovely. It's like the socks, isn't it? That's something that Bob remembers from his own visceral life experience there. And that is the thing, isn't it? The socks that you were talking about and Bob's gloves there, they're not the same, are they? As if you're working in a call center and you're busy, you can go buy some socks. You buy the cheapest socks, and they're made by a kid in bloody Bangladesh or something. It's just, that is miserable, isn't it? From start to finish, that's the life as that's the direction of travel in many ways for many people in the culture we live in. And the different ones on offer are one that we have lent into and have been attracted to over here in Portugal. So it's amazing, Lisa, to talk to you this morning and be reminded about that. So thank you very much. Anything else we can do from a sort of practical point of view, do you think, to help you specifically or this idea?
Well, I contacted you because I am wanting. Well, I've been very fortunate since the beginning that I have never done any advertising. I was supported by the Portuguese. I caught their attention, and the animals inspired them. And but I'm still, I'm still not breaking even. Sticking to one's principles is, you have to, sometimes make compromises. And so I was like, okay, let's try the advertising thing. But unfortunately, I have a real problem with advertising. I think it's the backbone of capitalism. And I don't like the way people are bombarded. I don't like being bombarded. And so my interest is there another way? Can we do this another way where we are not overstimulating people? I want people to know I'm here. I love to educate and to share. But can I do it another way without really putting it down people's throats? And so, because I'm trying to demonstrate that this is viable, and it's not 100% viable yet, you know. And I'm very clear when people ask me, when people want to do something that I'm doing, you know. But that's because of my principles and my concept of how what my company stands for.
Yeah.
So that was my initial like, hi Carl, can I come and talk? You know, because I wanted to put myself forward.
Yeah.
But I'm at the moment I'm interested in the idea of paying it forward, and thinking that this is a really nice way to go. But I'm not sure of Portugal. For me, it's always about making something viable for us as foreigners is one thing. Making it viable for the natives is really important too.
Yeah.
And so my thing is this has got to work for everyone, and and inclusively, this has got to work for the animals, and this has got to work for me. As obviously I'm my client. So that's where I'm at, and that's what I'm really interested in, having those dialogues as to how we can promote ourselves in a way that isn't aggressive and brings the opportunity so people can see, but they if we did a pay it forward scheme, I think this is super nice because it allows people to pay by their means, and there is something quite special when you put your mind into that set of that someone had actually paid for you before you got here.
Yes.
And you're leaving and you're paying for someone that's going to follow you. It's a very different way of it sort of re-gears here a little bit. And
I get it. It's giving rather than getting, isn't it? Yeah.
Calling this question your
the great
values.
thing is, I've got some good news and bad news. The bad news is it's 2 minutes to 10, so we have to finish. Which means the good news is hopefully you'll come back to do a part 2, or even have a residency where we have, you pop and see us like M does once a month to give us an update on what's going on at Montefrio, because we're talking about alpacas specifically, and we will do because Fiona's got a question, but it's not metaphorical, but it's like it's a reference point, isn't it? You're doing a specific thing, but from that specific thing we've been able to talk about all sorts of other wonderful things this morning that we think might be quite useful as a way forward. So I'd love it if you'd come back and do that on a regular basis now.
I'm enjoying myself now.
Well, and I would encourage that. I think you've been very inspiring this morning. So the floor is yours. Come and join us. Have your own segment here and with the alpacas. A quick question from Fiona. Good morning, Fiona. It's not difficult. Is it not difficult to keep alpacas healthy here? I follow a YouTuber who says they really need very specialized diets and veterinary treatments. Hers need inoculations every month and very specific specialist vets. If anyone knows the answer to that, that would be you, Lisa, right?
Yes.
Right.
She can contact me directly if she'd like on Facebook or Instagram, because you don't want me to answer that now. It's with 1 minute to go. Always very happy to talk alpaca. And the answer is no. And they're easy.
Oh, okay, good. And how can we connect with Lisa easily? So I'm going to put the link to the Montefrio alpaca farm in. Is that what you call yourself? Are you a farm? Are you an experience? What do you call yourself?
Well, we're Montefrio alpacas. Yeah. But we have a alojamento, so we have a Airbnb, and we're on Facebook and we're on Instagram.
Perfect. Okay, so there's a great opportunity and an invitation to go stay and hang out with Lisa and the alpacas there, and use the Airbnb close to Aveiro. People can also visit the lovely city of Aveiro whilst they're with you. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's fabulous. Yeah, it's 15 minutes away, and from the beach as well. So it's a lovely location.
Barra and the other one. I can't remember the name of it now. But the Avona
it's Vagueira. Yeah. It's Costa Nova, Barra, and Vagueira, and it's all. I mean, yeah, I love it here. I don't think you've been here, Carl. I think you have to
Okay,
come.
well, I'll have to put that right as well. Me and Bobby O'Reilly, the Englishman, the Irishman, and the alpaca lady walk into a farm. This is perfect. It's perfect. We'll do that this year. Locally, says Fiona, there's a place with camels and an ostrich. No idea what he does with them. Beijinhos a todos y a todos this morning from Philomena. We'll see you on Friday, I think, Philomena, won't we? So looking forward to that as well. Great to catch up with you. Good to see you back in your special place there in Central Portugal. Lisa, excellent to catch up with you in your special place. The link is there if anybody fancies booking to come and see you and hanging out with you in your company and finding more about alpacas and Avona. Thank you both so much. Everybody
Thank you,
have a
Thank
great
you,
day.
Em.
Yeah, it doesn't seem
Likewise.
right to do a great big rapturous round of applause. I just want to give you a nice gentle thank you very much and a hug, and thank you so much for being here with us this morning. It's been lovely. So we will see you all again soon. See you tomorrow morning for a happy hump day. Look, Patty's getting in on the action as well. Have a great day, everybody. Take care. I'm going to give you some GuMPer dust instead. Here's some luck for you. Living under cosmic knowledge, everybody. There you go. Blessings on you all. Bye for now.
Bom dia, Portugal! In Portugal, there's a YouTube show full of fun facts you need to know. Carl rings the bell and the members show to the GuMPer Morning Show. Featured guests will come and they will blow your mind. The audience will do so in kind. The little vanity mixed with some insanity on the morning show with GuMPer.
Good morning, Portugal, and I'd like to welcome you to another fantastic day